Hello friendos, it's Bella from the Bookish Badger, and today I'm coming at you guys with my 2018 BookTube-A-Thon Wrap Up. So I set out to read 7 books during BookTube-A-Thon. I only ended up reading 4, but honestly I'm really proud of myself anyway because yeah, I only read 4 books, but I had to work and I completed all 7 video challenges, and that was my main goal, is even more than the reading aspect. I really wanted to complete the video challenges and they were so much fun to do. So since I ended up doing the video challenges, which by the way, if you have not seen those, I will link all of them down in the description box below. But anyway, since I did those instead of vlogs and you guys don't know really what I read when, I didn't even post it on Twitter or anywhere, I will go in chronological order for you and break down what I read for each day. So starting off with day 1, which was Monday, instead of jumping into my TBR reading right away, I actually ended up finishing a couple of books that I was close to finishing so that I could start BookTube-A-Thon with a clean slate. The first of those 2 books that I finished that day was Cadaver & Queen by Alyssa Whitney, which I believe I ended up giving, I can't remember if it was 3 stars or 2.5 stars on Goodreads. I only had 30 pages left in it, so it was like the first thing I read in the morning, and I wanted to like it more than I did. I'm really glad that I got to it because it was like one of the main ones I wanted to get to by the end of the year, so I'm really happy that I got to it. But it was filled with a lot of tropes that I wasn't a fan of, and now Alyssa Whitney is big in the graphic novel world. She writes a lot of graphic novels and comic books. You could tell that from the writing in this book, because it was sort of like, the best way I can describe it is like if you're watching a dance that has a blacklight strobing so you're seeing it sort of disjointed. This was kind of like that. Like one thing would be happening and then the next thing would be happening without a lot of like in between explaining things. However, I do believe this was her first venture into YA, so I have hope that like the rest of the series, or I believe like a companion novel is coming out next, will hopefully like get better and it'll like gain its grounding a little bit. And I really liked the plot. It's like Frankenstein meets Grey's Anatomy, and that was a very cool thing to read. Plus, I've read her comic book series, Mystic You, and I really liked that. All the dialogue in that was really, like, stellar. So I think maybe this one was just a little bit shaky because it was, like, her first go into YA. That's what I think, anyway. I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the future. Anyway, 3 stars, or 2.5, something like that. And the second book I finished that morning was Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, which I don't have to hold up because I listened to it on audiobook. A lot of these in this video I'm not going to have to hold up because of either audiobook or just not owning a physical copy. But, Twilight. Well, I think I gave it 1.5 stars, which honestly I was surprised about. I was completely surprised by it because I thought it was going to be a solid 1 star. But 2 things that I liked, okay? One is I actually liked her reimagination of the vampire myth. I thought that was really cool and interesting to read, and I just like it when things that you think you know are reimagined and the characters who are that thing are like, oh, you think it's like this, but it's not. I just like that in books in general. And the second thing is that there was a vampire baseball game, okay? I'm not gonna say too much more about that, but vampire baseball game, it was something. It made the book worth it, okay? It made it worth it. What I didn't like about it was pretty much everything else. If I had to hear Bella talk about how hot Edward was one more time, I was going to stab myself with an iron stake. It felt like every minute was like, oh, Edward looks like a model. Oh, Edward's so beautiful. Oh, I can't believe Edward has looked sideways at me because he's just so gorgeous. And I couldn't take it anymore. And I was real happy that the book ended when it did. And another thing was I just don't really get Edward and Bella's attraction to each other. Like, I get that Edward thinks that Bella smells good, I guess, as a human, but other than that, Bella is just so boring. They're both so boring. Bella's not that great. Edward's kind of a jerk. He's really not that great either, and I don't get it. It's not for me, okay? The book is not for me. I will not continue with reading the series. I only picked this up because it was on that PBS 100 Greatest American Reads list, and I'm trying to make my way through reading that. And that was the only one that was available on audiobook at that time, so that is why I read that. And it was an experience. So that's it for the books that I only had a little bit of left, and I just finished the end on Monday. But now, starting with my actual TBR. So the first book that I started from my TBR was The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness, which I listened to on audiobook, and it fulfilled one of my miscellaneous audiobook slots that I had there. And oh my gosh, just absolutely brilliant and hilarious. Okay, so the plot. Imagine the book was Twilight, and you know, all these vampire and supernatural and werewolf things are going on. The Rest of Us Just Live Here is about who would be like, you know, the random kids at school who don't get paid attention to and who know vampire things are happening to. That's what The Rest of Us Just Live Here is about, and it is just, it's so funny, and the characters are surprisingly real for the situations that they're in, and it's really clever. The chapters are very long titles, and it's like chapter the 5th, in which Indie Kid Satch discovers the amulet which her uncle gave to her, and she goes to Indie Kid Finn and tells him, and Finn tells her that he loves her, and blah 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 blah. And then it will just go into, you know, what our main characters are doing, what the kids who just live there are doing. I have to say, I would highly recommend that book. I ended up finishing it on, I believe, Thursday, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book, which I also started on Monday but did not finish until Saturday, fulfilled my challenge of read a book with green on the cover, and that would be Fire and Ice: The Elementals by Erin Forbes. So this book follows the story of the twin sisters Emery and Alice, who have the elemental powers of fire and ice, and they get sent off to a school for gifted youth. It's sort of, I want to say, X-Men First Class meets Harry Potter sort of mashup thing we got going on, and you know, there's some secret things going on, and the forest is in danger, and the world is in danger, and they have to save it. I had a couple of issues with this book, namely the dialogue, which was very bizarrely done and just stilted, and everybody sort of sounded the same, but despite that, I still ended up giving it a 4-star rating, because the word that came to mind when I finished reading it was just charming. It's just a really sweet story, so even though the writing isn't perfect and the characters aren't perfect, I still really enjoyed it nonetheless. So for the next book I started and finished, fast forward to Saturday, my brother and I went over to Barnes & Noble and we hung out with a couple of friends, and after they left we both sat down with a book, and the book I sat down with fulfilled my read a book and then watch its movie adaptation challenge, and that was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. So I picked up the colored version of this graphic novel, and oh my gosh, first of all, I read it all in one sitting, but it was just absolutely hysterical. I was laughing out loud almost the entire time I was reading it. It is so well done. I love the art in it. The plot for this one is basically this guy, Scott Pilgrim, meets this girl, Ramona Flowers, and then finds out that if he wants to be with her, he has to defeat her 7 evil exes first. And hilarity ensues. I ended up giving that one 5 stars because I just loved it so much. It made me automatically want to binge read the rest of them, and as a matter of fact, I've already got the second one on hold at the library. Now, as for watching the movie, I watched it the next morning. I bought it when I was there, and I've seen this movie before. This was my favorite movie for a while, and I still loved it after reading the book, which, do you know how rarely that happens for me? But let me tell you, it was so faithful to the first book. Now the movie combines all of the books, so I can't say it's faithful to all of the books, but the first 20-25 or so minutes was almost word for word, not only word for word, but shot for shot the graphic novel. At the end of the colored edition of the graphic novel, it has all this bonus content of Brian Lee O'Malley talking about, you know, his inspiration for the series, and in it he talks about his inspiration for different shots, and a lot of the locations in Scott Pilgrim are exact pictures from his hometown, and they went to those locations in the hometown to film the movie because it was the exact same shots as were in the back of the book, and this made my heart so happy. And I would think that if it followed the first graphic novel that closely, that it follows the rest of the graphic novels pretty closely too. So I'm really looking forward to reading the rest of them and thinking about the movie in my head and comparing the two. But overall, a really just stellar, top-notch book-to-movie adaptation and book-to-movie combination. And the last book that I read for BookTube-A-Thon, I started on Thursday, I believe, like right after I finished The Rest of Us Just Live Here. I started this one on audiobook, and this one completed the other freebie audiobook challenge, and that was 1984 by George Orwell. So most of you probably already know the plot to this, but quick overview if you don't. It's basically about this dystopian world where the government controls absolutely everything. Not only does it control all literature and food rations and art and everything like that, it also controls each individual down to their thoughts. Let me tell you, it is scary. It is just, this book really did a good job of creating a dystopian world that makes you afraid. Like, you read this and you're like, I don't care what happens in life as long as this world does not come to be. For this not being a horror or suspense or thriller novel, it was terrifying down to the detail at pretty much every minute, every page of this book, to the point where you're like, are you sure this isn't a horror novel? Cause it feels like it. This one I ended up finishing just under the wire. It was 11:59 on Sunday night when I finished it, and I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Alright, so that was it for the reading. Like I said, I participated in every single day of the video challenges. My favorite ones were probably, I really like how my bookshelf came out, and I really loved the cosplay challenge. That one probably took the cake for me, and I really like how my cosplay of the Raven Boys book cover turned out. And not to mention, the BookTube-A-Thon Twitter account retweeted that video and said how great I had been doing and how I'd been participating in all of the video challenges, and then the account followed me, which was super cool because they don't follow a lot of people, and I was pleased as punch. Alright, that is pretty much it for this video. I would love to hear from you guys what you thought of this video, how your BookTube-A-Thon went, if you participated in BookTube-A-Thon, if you did any of the video challenges, if you didn't, if you did vlogs, if you have a wrap-up, if you read any of the books I read, if you liked them, if you didn't like them, if you want to read them now, any of it, all of it, please leave it in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, do not hesitate to give it a thumbs up, do not hesitate to subscribe for more content coming soon, and I will see you in the next video. Bookish Badger, signing off.